Yeah, my name's Billie. I'm the founder of affirm.space, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about safe spaces, their impact on mental health, and why there is really a business case for providing and creating safe spaces. So I thought I'd do a little bit about me first. I've had kind of a weird journey. I've been a musician for most of my life. I actually have a degree in pop music, which is really great for employability. But at the same time as that, I luckily also taught myself to code, and I've kind of been tinkering around with computers for most of my life. Music eventually led me to New York, and I sort of fell into the venture capital world, running digital stuff. I've kind of been at venture capital and incubators and early stage startups, and that's kind of led me to starting my own company, which is affirm.space. So a little bit about affirm.space. It's an app that recommends safe and gender-affirming businesses in your area. It's primarily for trans and non-binary people. It works kind of similarly to Yelp, so it's a user review model. So it's like, if I want to find a gender-affirming laser hair removal clinic, I can go on the app and I can see the nearest ones that are trans-affirming or gender-affirming. So why is it valuable for businesses to make their spaces actively affirming and safe? We've got a historic high in visibility for the LGBT community. You know, we're on the front cover of magazines. We are lead characters in films and on TV shows. But this is, at least, you know, I feel that this is a double-edged sword sometimes. When you have increased visibility and increased understanding, that also leaves us vulnerable to discrimination, to being able to be recognized. You know, by no longer flying under the radar, we're making ourselves vulnerable, which is the right thing to do, but it also, you know, it's a tricky thing. And there's actually been a twofold increase in LGBT hate crime since 2014. So it's clear that with this, you know, increased exposure is increasing literal hate crimes. Similarly, almost 1 in 5 LGBT employees have been the target of negative comments or conduct from work colleagues in the last year just because they're LGBT. 1 in 6 LGBT people have been discriminated against because of their sexual orientation and or gender identity when visiting a cafe, restaurant, bar, or nightclub in the last year. And this study also has very similar data points when it comes to clothing stores, public services, housing. So what can we do? Well, I think that this is something that we can tackle from both sides, from an employee side and from a customer side. So there was a 2013 study when they looked at onboarding and employee retention. In one group, they prioritized individuality. So they gave them sweaters with their name on it. They asked them what their unique skills were. And in the second group, they prioritized company, basically. So they gave them sweaters with the company name on it. They just talked to them about the company values. And in the group that had individuality prioritized, there was a 47.2 increase in retention. So like huge increase here. It's clear we want to bring our full selves to work. We don't want to feel like we're a cog in the machine. But also, you know, high employee turnover costs a lot of money, and it also costs a lot of time. If you're constantly replacing staff members, you're going to have to retrain them, get them up to speed. You know, it costs a lot of money. It's also not enough to retain employees. If you're looking at more marginalized communities, there was a 2014 study, 50% of survey respondents who felt they had to mute some aspect of their identity, whether that's gender or sexuality or even race. They had 50% of those people that said they had to do that had a diminished sense of commitment to their work. So this is the idea of like covering. So it's if you feel that you can't fully be yourself, if you have to use gender neutral pronouns when referring to your partner so that you don't out yourself, things like that. Interestingly, among straight white men, 45% said that they downplayed characteristics such as mental health issues. So this does affect everyone. fostering environments where you can be open about this kind of thing not only improves employee retention, but also means that we are more committed to our work, that we do better work, and that we're happier people. On the customer side, there is very similar data. So 87% of LGBT adults would consider purchasing from a brand that provided equal workplace benefits for LGBT people. And 23% of LGBT adults had already switched to a product that was for a company that was more LGBT supportive, even if that brand was expensive or less convenient for them. So it's clear that there's a huge demand from customers for businesses to be LGBT inclusive and to provide safe spaces for their employees to be themselves. So this is just like a personal story. I am a trans woman. I didn't think about which way I was going to be on this thing, so I'm just going to try and... I used to live down here in Bushwick. I used to travel all the way through Manhattan and up. It was an hour and a half each way just to get laser hair removal because I knew that that place had been recommended by another trans woman. Obviously, this is just my story, but I have loads of stories that can corroborate this. For me, the peace of mind of knowing that I wasn't going to be discriminated against, and I knew that I was going to have an affirming experience and not be misgendered or laughed at, was worth traveling that far, and also I paid more. I probably traveled hundreds of, if anyone's used Groupon, you see it's like a million coupons on Groupon for laser hair removal. So I was, making this active choice to go up there. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this campaign. It's by LGBT Switchboard, who are a UK call centre. Since 1974, Switchboard has taken more than 3 million calls from people looking to find LGBT safe spaces in the UK. So it's clear that there is like a huge, huge demand for safe spaces, places where people feel that they can be themselves. What are safe spaces, though? I think it can mean a lot of different things. I think one part of it, and the most common one that we see, is like the LGBT flag in places. I don't think that is the be-all and end-all. I'm not sure how many people have also had this experience, but I personally have definitely had experiences in gay bars that have the LGBT flag up that aren't actually providing safe spaces for the full acronym there. It's about actively fostering an environment where you are being actively encouraged to be yourself without judgment and with zero tolerance policies to protect yourself. I was talking a little bit about authenticity earlier. I think also from like a customer perspective, like customers want authenticity. It's not enough, and employees want authenticity too. I've been to so many companies that have just like a statement of intent where it's like, we don't discriminate against all these different kinds of people. But if you're not actually walking the walk and you're not really, doing the work, then it's meaningless and you're not going to keep employees or customers that way. How can we create safe spaces? So I feel that the correct route forward is to encourage existing spaces to become safe rather than creating new ones. I think creating new ones is wonderful. I think it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time and risk. So I've just got a kind of a list of ways that we can make existing spaces safer. So creating a culture of inclusion. I talked about that a bit earlier. That's like flags, signposting, zero tolerance policies, events. So events like this one are amazing. So we know that this is going to be a safe space for LGBT people. We know that there is, going to be zero tolerance policies and that kind of thing. But another great example, I'm realizing now that I'm in the UK and I live in New York, so this might be lost in translation, but does anyone know Sephora?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're like they sell beauty products and makeup and that kind of thing, and they also do makeup classes for everyone. But they have a specific program to help trans people learn how to put on makeup, essentially. And so those kind of events are amazing. Physical alterations, gender-neutral toilets. Not to call out Tesco, but it's single-sex toilets down below. partnerships with charities and other organizations. I've talked about this. Hiring practices. I know in the UK you have to be kind of careful about what demographic information you store, but it's about looking at your pipeline from a hiring perspective, and am I only seeing the same kinds of candidates coming through every single time, and what can I do to encourage different kinds of candidates to come through? And once those diverse candidates are in place, how am I protecting them? How am I making them feel like they belong in this company? The last two, a little bit of a self-promotion thing, but sensitivity training, that is something that affirm.space is looking to start providing, and supporting businesses that make this effort. So, affirm.space's mission ultimately is to highlight companies that are doing this work, that are creating safe spaces. But it's something that you can all do too. If you know of a company or a business that is, making this effort, because it is effort. It's an effort that will be rewarding to them eventually, but it is effort initially. Support them, buy whatever they're selling, tell your friends about them, So yeah, in conclusion, retention and quality work is affected by employee ability to be open about their identities. Customer loyalty is affected positively in the same way, and it's valuable to businesses to be safe spaces for their employees and their customers. So that's my email, that's my Twitter. Come and talk to me after. I would love to talk to anyone about affirm.space's mission, about any of the stuff that I talked about before, or just, how good the pizza is, whatever you want to talk about. Cool, thank you.